Homeless single dad bought a storage unit with a huge crate, and the owner was wanted by police. Marcus Hayes was 37 years old, living in a 2004 Honda Odyssey with his 6-year-old daughter, and he had exactly $412 to his name when he cut the lock on Unit 47 and saw the crate. It wasn't just big, it was industrial, the kind of thing you'd see on a cargo ship, stenciled with faded numbers and warning labels in 3 languages. The wood was dark, almost black with age, and it sat in the center of the 10 by 10 space like an altar. Around it, nothing. No furniture, no boxes of Christmas decorations, no forgotten exercise equipment. Just the crate, a single folding chair facing it, and a smell that Marcus's stomach turned. Something chemical and sweet and wrong. His daughter, Maya, stood at the threshold, her hand tight in his. "Daddy, what's that smell?" Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at the chair, at the way it was positioned, like someone had spent hours just looking at the crate, waiting. The storage facility's overhead lights flickered, and in that strobe of shadow and fluorescence, Marcus saw the padlock on the crate's front panel. Not a cheap combination lock like the one he'd just cut off the unit door. This was serious hardware. Thick steel, the kind that said, "Whatever's in here, someone really didn't want it found." Wait, before you see what's inside. If this story already has your heart pounding, tell us where you're watching from. When forgotten boxes open, when second chances hide under dust and debt, subscribe and stay close. You'll never guess what's been left behind. Now, back to the lock clicking open. 3 months ago, Marcus had been a construction foreman with a crew of 8, a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside, and a daughter who still believed her daddy could fix anything. Then the developer went bankrupt halfway through the mall renovation. The checks stopped coming, and the landlord didn't care about promises or unemployment applications. 2 weeks after the eviction, Marcus's ex-wife, Shanice, had called from Atlanta. She'd gotten the teaching position, she'd met someone, and no, she couldn't take Maya right now, maybe in a few months when things were settled. So it was just him and Maya and the Odyssey with 180,000 miles on it, living in Walmart parking lots and Planet Fitness bathrooms, Marcus telling his little girl it was an adventure while he watched her get quieter every day. The storage auction had been a desperate play. Marcus had seen the YouTube videos, people buying abandoned units, finding vintage guitars or collectible toys, flipping them for thousands. He'd driven to the auction lot on fumes, literally, the gaslight glowing amber the whole way. Unit 47 had gone for $300. Most of the serious buyers had passed on it, too small, nothing visible through the door crack, probably empty. Marcus had bid because he had to, because $400 was nothing and everything, and if there was even a chance. Now, standing in the chemical-sweet darkness with his daughter's hand in his, Marcus wondered if he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. "Stay by the door, baby," he said softly. Maya nodded, her thumb finding her mouth, a habit she'd broken at 4 but had started again since they'd been living in the van. Marcus approached the crate. It was roughly 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, 4 feet tall. The wood was secured with metal bands, the kind you'd need bolt cutters to get through. He walked around it slowly, his phone's flashlight cutting through the gloom. On the back, someone had spray-painted something in red. "Final shipment. Do not open. DR." The initials sent a strange prickle down Marcus's spine. There was something in the way they were written, hasty, almost panicked. He crouched down, examining the base of the crate. That's when he noticed the items tucked underneath, just barely visible. A sleeping bag, a case of bottled water, and a shoebox. Marcus pulled out the shoebox. Inside, a Rolex watch, or a damn good fake, a stack of $100 bills bound with a rubber band, a passport, and a 9mm handgun. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. The passport was U.S. issued. the photo showing a man in his 50s with gray temples and tired eyes. The name read Daniel Reeves. Marcus flipped through it. Stamps from Mexico, Colombia, Panama, all within the last 2 years. He picked up the cash, thumbed through it. At least $10,000, maybe 15. His hands were shaking. This wasn't some estate sale gone to auction. This was someone's escape plan, or someone's hiding place. "Daddy?" Maya's voice was small from the doorway. "Can we go?" Marcus looked at his daughter, silhouetted against the bright California morning outside. She was wearing the same pink shirt she'd worn for 3 days, the one they'd washed in the Planet Fitness sink. Her sneakers had a hole in the left toe. Last night, she'd asked if they could get chicken nuggets for dinner, and Marcus had said maybe, knowing they'd eat the dollar menu at McDonald's again, knowing he was rationing their money down to the hour. In his hand, enough cash to get them into a motel, to buy Maya new clothes, to put gas in the van and food in her belly, and maybe give him enough breathing room to find actual work. He looked at the gun, at the passport, at the crate with its dire warning. The smart thing, the legal thing, would be to call the police right now. Report what had found. Let them deal with Daniel Reeves and whatever was in that crate. But Marcus had learned something in the 3 months since his life had fallen apart. The system didn't care about smart or legal when you're homeless. The police would take the money as evidence. They'd probably take Maya too while they investigated, put her in child services while they decided if Marcus was fit to keep her. He'd seen it happen to a guy at the shelter, watched them load his kids into a county van while the father wept and promised he was trying so hard. Marcus put the cash in his pocket, then the passport. He left the gun. He wasn't that desperate yet, and the weight of it scared him. "Just a minute, baby," he called to Maya. "Daddy needs to figure something out." He turned back to the crate. The padlock was serious, but the wood bands, he might be able to pry them loose. He had a crowbar in the van, part of his old tool set that he'd managed to hold on to. Whatever was inside, he needed to know, needed to understand what he was dealing with. 20 minutes later, sweating in the California heat, Marcus got the first band loose. The metal screeched against the wood, and Maya came to the doorway again. "Is there treasure in there?" she asked, her voice holding the first hint of curiosity Marcus had heard in weeks. "I don't know, baby. Maybe." The second band came off easier. The third required him to use the van's tire iron as leverage, and when it finally gave way, Marcus nearly fell backward. He stood there, breathing hard, looking at the crate. Just had to pry up the top panel now. The crowbar slipped into the gap between the lid and the frame. Marcus leaned his weight into it, felt the wood resist, then the lid cracked open with a sound like a gunshot. Marcus jumped back. Maya squeaked. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Marcus stepped forward and lifted the lid the rest of the way. Inside the crate, packed in industrial foam and bubble wrap, were paintings. Not prints, not posters, paintings. Oil on canvas, the kind Marcus had seen once on a school field trip to the Getty Museum. There had to be 30 of them, maybe more, carefully stacked and separated with acid-free paper. The one on top showed a woman in a garden, her face turned toward sunlight, rendered in brushstrokes so delicate they looked alive. Marcus carefully lifted it out. On the back, someone had written in pencil, "Study after Cassatt, 1889 style, DR 2019. He set it aside and looked at the next one, then the next. Each one was labeled similarly. Study after Monet, study after Renoir, study after Degas. These weren't originals, they were copies, but they were incredible copies, the kind of thing that would take hundreds of hours and serious skill to create. Marcus had worked construction for 15 years. He knew craftsmanship when he saw it. Whoever Daniel Reeves was, he was an artist. Or a forger. The word crystallized in Marcus's mind with sudden, terrible clarity. The passport with stamps from countries known for black market art, the cash, the gun, the warning spray-painted on the crate, the fact that this unit had been abandoned at all, which meant Daniel Reeves either couldn't come back for it or didn't want to. Marcus was standing in the middle of a crime scene. His phone buzzed in his pocket, making him jump. He pulled it out, a text from the manager at the construction temp agency. "Sorry, man, nothing today. Check back Friday." Friday was 4 days away. Maya's school, the one Marcus had managed to keep her enrolled in by using the address of the shelter they sometimes stayed at, would want money for the field trip next week. $15, a nothing amount when you had a job, an impossible amount when you were living on $412. $412 minus the $300 he'd just spent on this unit. Marcus looked at the paintings, looked at his daughter, sitting on the concrete outside the unit, drawing pictures in the dust with a stick, looked at the passport in his pocket, at the face of Daniel Reeves staring up at him with those tired eyes. What do you do when you stumble into someone else's crime? When the right thing and the survival thing are two different things? When your daughter is 6 years old and homeless and losing her light day by day? Marcus pulled out his phone and Googled Daniel Reeves art forgery. The first result made his blood go cold. FBI seeking Daniel Reeves in connection with $15 million art forgery ring. Federal Bureau of Investigation 3 months ago. The FBI is seeking information regarding the whereabouts of Daniel Reeves, 52, wanted in connection with an international art forgery and fraud scheme. Reeves is believed to have created and sold fraudulent reproductions of Impressionist masterworks to private collectors and galleries across the United States and Europe. Authorities estimate the total fraud value at approximately $15 million. Reeves was last seen in San Diego, California in August. He is considered a flight risk and should not be approached. Anyone with information should contact. Marcus's hands were trembling so badly he nearly dropped the phone. $15 million. The FBI. This wasn't some small-time hustle. This was the kind of thing that destroyed lives. He needed to walk away. Lock up the unit, forget he'd ever seen it, take the loss on the $300 and chalk it up to a lesson learned. But that left him with $112, no job, and a daughter who'd asked this morning if they could stay in a hotel tonight because she was tired of sleeping in the van. Marcus looked at the paintings again, studied the one on top, the woman in the garden. Even knowing it was a forgery, it was beautiful. Museum quality. How much would something like this sell for to someone who didn't know it was fake? A few thousand? More? No, he couldn't. That would make him part of the crime, part of the fraud. But what if? What if someone just wanted to buy a beautiful painting? What if Marcus sold these as exactly what they were? Studies, copies, reproductions. There was nothing illegal about that. Art students did it all the time, sold their copies of famous works, as long as he was honest about what they were. The rationalization felt thin even as he thought it. But Maya was 6 years old and living in a minivan, and Marcus had been trying to do everything right for 3 months, and right had gotten them exactly nowhere. He carefully closed the crate and dragged it toward the unit door. It was heavy, but he could manage it. He'd load it into the Odyssey, take it somewhere safe, figure out his next move. "Are we taking the treasure, Daddy?" Maya asked, standing up as he approached. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the hope in her eyes, the first real hope he'd seen in so long. "Yeah, baby," he said quietly, "we're taking the treasure." The Super 8 on the east side of town cost $43 a night. Marcus paid for 2 nights in cash and carried Maya to the room. her small body already asleep on his shoulder. The crate was locked in the van, covered with an old tarp. The paintings haunted Marcus's mind as he lay in the dark, listening to Maya's steady breathing from the other bed. $15 million. The FBI. Wanted. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, Marcus pulled out Daniel Reeves' passport and really looked at it. The stamps told a story. First trips to Mexico City and Guadalajara, then Panama City, then Colombia. The dates were clustered. A few weeks in one place, a month in another. Running. Reeves had been running. Marcus Googled the name again, this time adding news update. A new article appeared, dated just 2 weeks ago. Body of fugitive art forger Daniel Reeves found in Tijuana. Marcos authorities report that Reeves died of an apparent heart attack. His death closes an investigation that had spanned 3 years and multiple countries. This individual defrauded collectors and institutions of millions of dollars, stated FBI special agent. Marcus stopped reading. He set the phone down, his mind racing. Dead. Daniel Reeves was dead, which meant there was no one looking for these paintings anymore. No fugitive going to come back for his stash. The FBI had their guy, or at least they had closure. The case was closed. And Marcus was sitting in a $43 motel room with what might be the last pieces of a dead man's double life. He got up, careful not to wake Maya, and went outside to the van. The parking lot was empty except for a couple of semis at the far end. Marcus opened the back, pulled the tarp aside, and opened the crate again. In the dim light of his phone, he went through the paintings one by one. There were 37 total, each one labeled with Daniel Reeves' notation. Study after famous artist. DR, year. They really were extraordinary. Even to Marcus's untrained eye, they captured something essential about the originals. The light, the movement, the emotion. Reeves might have been a criminal, but he'd been a gifted one. At the bottom of the crate, underneath the last painting, Marcus found an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter on yellow legal paper. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. To whoever finds this. I know what I am. I know what I've done. I told myself for years that I was just giving people what they wanted, that the art world is already full of fakes and frauds, that I was just another player in a rigged game. But the truth is simpler and worse. I was good at something I should never have done, and I couldn't stop. These paintings were my exit strategy. I was going to sell them legitimately as reproductions and use the money to disappear into a new life. But I'm out of time. My heart is giving out. I can feel it, the chest pains, the shortness of breath. My doctor in Panama City said 6 months, maybe less. I don't have 6 months of running left in me. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. These paintings are yours. Do what you want with them. Sell them, burn them, turn them over to the FBI. I'm beyond consequences now. I do have one request. In the shoebox, you'll find a watch and some cash. The watch belonged to my father. If you could find my daughter, her name is Elizabeth Reeves, she lives in Portland, Oregon, and give it to her, I'd be grateful. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I thought about her every day. The money is for you, whoever you are. Consider it payment for finding a dead man's secrets and keeping them. Daniel Reeves. Marcus read the letter 3 times. The parking lot lights buzzed above him. A semi-engine turned over, then rumbled away into the night. A daughter in Portland. An apology that would never be delivered in person. A father who'd spent his last months running from himself as much as the FBI. Marcus thought about his own daughter, asleep in the motel room. Thought about what he'd do, what lengths he'd go to if he were down to his last days. Thought about forgiveness and whether it mattered if the person asking for it was already gone. He folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. Then he closed the crate, locked the van, and went back inside. In the morning, he'd figure out what to do. In the morning, he'd decide what kind of man he was going to be. The kind who took the desperate gift a dead man had left, or the kind who tried to do something harder and stranger. But for now, he lay down in a real bed for the first time in 3 months, listening to Maya breathe, and let himself believe that maybe, somehow, they'd find their way out of this. But for now, he woke up. Maya woke up at 7 a.m. and was delighted by the motel room's continental breakfast. Marcus watched her eat pancakes and drink orange juice, her face animated in a way he hadn't seen in months. Other families moved through the breakfast area, fathers in business casual heading to sales calls, mothers corralling toddlers, a retired couple reading the newspaper together. Normal lives, the kind Marcus used to have. "Can we stay here forever?" Maya asked, syrup on her chin. "Not forever, baby, but a couple days." "That's like forever," she said seriously, and Marcus had to turn away because his eyes were burning. After breakfast, he drove to a UPS store and used their computer to search for Elizabeth Reeves in Portland. There were 3 listings. He copied down the addresses and phone numbers, not sure yet what he'd do with them. Then he drove to an art supply store in downtown Riverside. The woman behind the counter was in her 60s, paint-stained fingers, gray hair in a practical bun. Her name tag said Judith. "Help you?" she asked. "I have a theoretical question," Marcus said. "If someone had a really good reproduction of a famous painting, like a study that an art student did, what would something like that be worth?" Judith raised an eyebrow. "Depends on the quality and the artist. Most student work, maybe $50 to $100 if it's decent. But if you're talking about professional-level reproductions, museum-quality work, that's different. I've seen those go for several thousand if they're good enough." "Several thousand?" "Sure, there's a whole market for it. Rich people who want a Monet in their living room but can't afford a real one. Hotels, corporate offices, high-end restaurants. As long as you're selling them as reproductions, not trying to pass them off as originals, it's perfectly legal." Legal? The word echoed in Marcus's mind. How would someone go about selling something like that? Judith studied him. "You're not an art student, are you?" "No, ma'am. Just someone who came into something unexpected." She nodded slowly. "There are brokers, galleries that specialize in high-quality reproductions. You could also try online marketplaces, but you'd need good photos and provenance documentation. People want to know where the piece came from, who created it, that kind of thing." "What if the artist was deceased?" "Even better, in some ways. Estate sales, posthumous work, that can actually increase the value if the artist had real skill." Judith paused. "You want my honest advice? Please. Whatever you've got, if it's as good as you're implying, don't rush. Get an actual appraiser to look at it, someone reputable. They can tell you what you're really dealing with and connect you with the right buyers. Trying to move high-end art without knowing what you're doing is a good way to get ripped off or worse." Marcus thanked her and left. In the van, he sat with the engine running, thinking. An appraiser, someone reputable, which meant someone who might recognize Daniel Reeves's work, who might know about the FBI investigation, who might ask uncomfortable questions about how a homeless construction worker came to possess 37 museum-quality forgeries. He pulled out his phone and looked at the addresses for Elizabeth Reeves. 3 possibilities. 1 in Northwest Portland, 1 in Beaverton, 1 in Lake Oswego. The watch in the shoebox was a Rolex Submariner, and even Marcus could tell it was real. He'd looked up the model, worth at least $15,000. Add that to the $10,000 in cash Daniel Reeves had left, and Marcus was sitting on $25,000 just in the shoebox. More than enough to get him and Maya into an apartment, to buy her clothes and toys and a real bed, to give himself breathing room to find steady work, to stop the slow drowning they'd been doing for 3 months. But it wasn't his money. It was a dying man's apology to a daughter who'd probably written him off years ago. Marcus looked back at the motel, where Maya was watching cartoons in the room. He thought about that pancake breakfast, her smile, the way she'd slept through the night without waking up scared. He thought about Elizabeth Reeves in Portland, who had a father who'd thought about her every day, who'd wanted her to have his father's watch, who'd wanted to say sorry. He thought about the paintings in the crate, works of genuine beauty created by a man who'd used his gifts wrong, who'd run out of time before he could make it right. Do what you want with them, the letter had said. Sell them, burn them, turn them over to the FBI. But Daniel Reeves had asked for one thing, just one. Get the watch to his daughter. Tell her, I'm sorry. Marcus had been a lot of things in his life. A husband, a father, a foreman, a guy just trying to hold it together. He'd made mistakes, plenty of them. He'd failed in ways that still woke him up at night. But he'd never been a thief, never been someone who took something that wasn't his, even when he desperately needed it. Even when his daughter was 6 years old and living in a van. He started the engine and pointed the Odyssey north, toward Portland. The drive took 16 hours with stops. Maya slept for most of it, curled up in the back seat with the old blanket that smelled like their former apartment. Marcus drove through the night, the crates secured in the cargo area, Daniel Reeves' letter in his pocket. He thought about a lot during those 16 hours. He thought about his own father, who died when Marcus was 12, who'd left him a tool belt and a work ethic and not much else. He thought about the last time he'd seen Shanice, the way she'd looked at him like he was already failing, already not enough. He thought about Maya's kindergarten teacher, Miss Rockland. Chen, who'd pulled him aside and gently suggested that Maya might benefit from seeing a counselor because she was showing signs of anxiety, and Marcus had nodded and said, yes, absolutely, knowing he had no idea how he'd pay for something like that. He thought about Elizabeth Reeves, who might be a doctor or a teacher or a barista or anything at all, who had no idea her father was dead, who had no idea someone was driving through the night to give her a watch and an apology. Portland appeared through the pre-dawn mist, the city still mostly asleep. Marcus pulled into a rest stop and used the bathroom, splashed water on his face. Maya woke up, asking where they were. Portland, he said. We're delivering something for someone. Like Santa Claus? Yeah, baby, kinda like that. He'd decided on the Northwest Portland address. It seemed the most likely based on the age and neighborhood. At 8 a.m., with the city waking up around them, Marcus pulled up to a narrow Victorian house painted pale yellow. The front yard was neat, a bicycle on the porch, a cat in the window. He told Maya to wait in the van, took the shoebox, and walked to the door. A woman answered on the second knock. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing scrubs. A nurse or doctor, Marcus guessed. She looked tired but kind. Can I help you? Are you Elizabeth Reeves? Wariness crossed her face. Who's asking? Marcus took a breath. My name is Marcus Hayes. I'm here about your father, Daniel Reeves. The color drained from her face. Did they catch him? No, yes, but can I come in? This is going to take a minute. Elizabeth looked past him, at the van, at Maya's face in the window, then back at Marcus. Whatever she saw in his face, it must have been enough. She stepped aside. 5 minutes, she said. Then I'm calling the police. They sat in her small living room. Marcus told her everything. The storage auction, the crate, the paintings, the letter. He showed her Daniel Reeves' passport, the article about his death in Tijuana. He watched her face move through shock to grief to something harder to name. When he finished, Elizabeth sat silent for a long time. Then she said, "He left when I was 16, just disappeared one day. My mom said he couldn't handle being a father, being a husband, being normal. For years, I thought he just didn't want us." "He thought about you every day," Marcus said quietly. "He said so in the letter." "That's supposed to make it better, that he thought about me while he was committing fraud, while he was running?" "No, it doesn't make it better, but it's what he wanted you to know." Marcus opened the shoebox, took out the watch. This was his father's, your grandfather's. He wanted you to have it. Elizabeth stared at the watch like it might bite her. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Her hands were shaking. "I remember this watch," she whispered. "My grandfather used to let me hold it when I was little. He said it would be mine someday, my dad's and then mine." She looked up at Marcus, tears on her face. Why didn't he just come home? Why did he have to make it so complicated? Marcus thought about his own complications, the choices that had seemed necessary at the time. "I don't know. I think maybe he was scared. I think maybe he didn't know how to stop being what he'd become." "And you?" Elizabeth said. "Why are you here? You could have kept all of this, the paintings, the money, all of it. You drove 16 hours to give a dead man's watch to someone you've never met. Why?" Marcus looked out the window at his van, at Maya waiting for him. "I've got a daughter, 6 years old. We're homeless right now, living in my van, eating dollar menu, trying to figure out tomorrow. Your father left money in that box, enough to get us into an apartment, to give my little girl a real bed and 3 meals a day. God knows I need it. But it's not mine. None of it is. And I don't want to teach my daughter that you take things that don't belong to you just because you need them. I don't want her to learn that way." Elizabeth wiped her eyes. "What about the paintings?" "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring that out." She stood up, left the room. Marcus sat there wondering if he'd just made a massive mistake, if she was calling the police after all. But when Elizabeth came back, she was holding a checkbook. "How much money was in the box?" she asked. "About 10,000. And you spent 300 on the storage unit?" "Yes, ma'am." Elizabeth wrote a check, tore it off, handed it to Marcus. $15,000. "What? I can't." "That money was stolen," Elizabeth said firmly. "All of it. From people my father defrauded, from a life he had no right to. I don't want it. But you drove 16 hours to give me something you could have kept. You did what my father should have done years ago. You did the right thing even when it cost you. So take it. Get your daughter a home. Get her a bed. Get yourself a chance." Marcus stared at the check, his vision blurring. "I don't know what to say." "Say thank you. Say you'll take care of your little girl. Say you'll teach her that doing right matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "Thank you," Marcus managed. "Thank you." At the door, Elizabeth stopped him. "The paintings. You said there were 37 of them." "Yes. My father was gifted. Whatever else he was, he had real talent. Those paintings, they're probably beautiful, aren't they?" "They are." "Sell them. Honestly, as reproductions, exactly what they are. Find someone reputable who can help you do it legally. Use that money to build something for your daughter. My father spent his gift destroying lives. Maybe you can use it to save one." The drive back to California took another 16 hours. Marcus stopped at a park in Eugene and let Maya play on the swings while he sat on a bench and just breathed. The check was in his wallet. $15,000. Enough for first and last month's rent. Enough for a deposit on an apartment. Enough for new clothes and new shoes and chicken nuggets whenever Maya wanted them. Enough for breathing room. He called the temp agency on the way back, told them he needed to check in for the next available job. They had something starting Monday, renovation work on an office building downtown. 8 months of work, maybe more. By the time they hit Riverside, Marcus had a plan. The art broker's name was Margaret Chen, and she operated out of a small gallery in Pasadena. Marcus had found her through a careful string of Google searches and phone calls, checking references, making sure she was legitimate. She specialized in estate sales and high-quality reproductions. She met him at the storage unit on a Thursday morning, bringing an assistant and a professional camera. Marcus had spent the previous 2 days cleaning the paintings, documenting each one, researching their provenance as best he could. Margaret opened the crate, looked at the first painting, and went very still. "Where did you get these?" she asked carefully. Marcus had prepared for this question. He handed her a folder, copies of the storage unit auction documents, Daniel Reeves' death certificate that had requested from Tijuana authorities, the FBI's closure notice on the case, and a notarized statement from Elizabeth Reeves, confirming that she was the sole heir to her father's estate and that she authorized Marcus to sell the artwork as reproductions. It had taken him 2 weeks and several $100s in legal fees to put together, but it was clean. It was right. Margaret read through everything twice. Then she looked at the paintings again. "These are extraordinary," she said finally. "Museum quality, absolutely." "And you're selling them as?" "Reproductions, studies, exactly what they are, nothing else." She nodded slowly. "I can work with this. The provenance is unusual, but it's documented. The artist is deceased, which adds value. And the quality." She picked up the painting of the woman in the garden, studied it in the light. "I can get you at least $3,000 per painting, possibly more for the larger pieces. We're looking at over $100,000 total, conservatively." Marcus had to sit down. "Of course, that's before commission," Margaret continued. "I take 30%. And it'll take time. I'll need to photograph everything, write proper descriptions, reach out to my network of buyers. We're talking 6 months, maybe a year to move them all." "That's fine," Marcus said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Take whatever time you need." They shook on it. Margaret and her assistant spent the rest of the day cataloging the paintings. When they were done, she handed Marcus a contract and her card. "You did the right thing, documenting everything," she said. "A lot of people in your situation would have tried to cut corners. That always ends badly." "I've got a daughter," Marcus said. "I want her to be proud of how we got through this." Margaret smiled. "She will be." The apartment was in a quiet complex in Moreno Valley, 20 minutes from Maya's school. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a small kitchen with a window that got morning light. The walls were beige, the carpet was worn, the whole place smelled like old paint. It was perfect. Maya picked the smaller bedroom for herself, spent an hour deciding where her bed would go. Marcus had bought it used from a family on Craigslist, a white wooden frame with a purple comforter. He set it up while Maya unpacked the 3 boxes of belongings they'd accumulated in the van. That night, their first night in the apartment, Marcus made spaghetti. They ate at a folding table with mismatched chairs, no TV yet, no couch, just the 2 of them and a meal that wasn't from a drive-thru. "Daddy," Maya said, twirling noodles on her fork, "are we going to live here forever?" "Not forever, baby, but for a while, as long as we need." "That's like forever," she said, and grinned. After dinner, Marcus tucked her into her new bed. She was asleep before he finished the bedtime story, her face peaceful in a way he hadn't seen in months. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. Later, sitting on the floor of his own empty bedroom, Marcus took out Daniel Reeves's letter and read it again. "These paintings are yours. Do what you want with them." He'd done what he wanted. He'd done what felt right. And somehow, against odds that had seemed impossible, it was working. The job at the office building turned into a permanent foreman position. Margaret called 3 months later to say she'd sold the first 10 paintings, sending Marcus a check for $21,000 after commission. Then another 5 sold, then another batch. 6 months after opening the crate in Unit 47, Marcus had $50,000 in a savings account, steady work, and a daughter who laughed again. He sent a portion of the money to Elizabeth Reeves with a note. "Your father's work is helping us build something good. I thought you'd want to know." She wrote back, "Thank you for showing me that even mistakes can become something better. I hope you and your daughter are well." A year later, Marcus stood in Unit 47 one last time. He'd kept the rental going, using it for storage now that they had the apartment. His tools were here, some of Maya's old toys she'd outgrown, Boxes of things that would eventually make their way into a bigger place. The crate was gone. The paintings were gone. But the space still held the memory of that morning. The chemical smell, the warning spray-painted on wood, the desperate hope he'd felt standing here with $100 to his name and a daughter who needed everything. He'd come here today for a reason. He pulled out his phone and found the photo he'd taken that first day, the one showing the spray-painted warning, "Final shipment, do not open, DR." Beneath it, with a new can of black paint, Marcus wrote something of his own. "First step, do not give up, MH and MH." For the next person who needed to find their way. For the next desperate soul who'd spent their last dollar on a long shot. For his daughter, someday, if she ever asked how they survived. He locked the unit and walked back to his car, a used Honda Accord he'd bought 3 months ago, reliable and safe. Maya was at school right now, learning multiplication and making friends. Tonight, they'd get pizza, her choice of toppings. This weekend, they were going to the beach, something she'd been asking about for a month. Normal things, simple things, the kind of life Marcus had thought they'd lost forever. As he drove out of the storage facility, past rows of identical units holding the forgotten belongings of other people's lives, Marcus thought about Daniel Reeves, about a gifted man who'd used his talents wrong, who'd run out of time before redemption, about a father who'd thought about his daughter every day but never found his way home, about second chances and where you find them, about doing right when it costs you everything, about teaching your daughter that the world can be both harder and better than you expect, and that sometimes, in a 10 by 10 storage unit in the California heat, you find exactly what you need, even if it's not what you were looking for. The morning sun caught Marcus's windshield as he turned onto the highway. Maya's school drop-off pass on the dashboard, a job waiting for him at 1 p.m., an apartment with both their names on the lease. From homeless to home, from desperate to stable, from a crate full of stolen beauty to a life they'd built themselves, honest and hard and real. Marcus Hayes was 38 years old, and he was teaching his daughter that when you find someone else's treasure, you don't have to keep it to make it yours. Sometimes the treasure is what you do with it. Sometimes the treasure is who you become when you choose to do right. Sometimes the treasure is getting to wake up tomorrow and try again. He drove toward his daughter's school, toward his job site, toward the future they were building one honest day at a time. Behind him, Unit 47 stood silent in the California sun, its warning and its promise spray-painted on the door, waiting for whoever needed them next. The lock was open. The story wasn't finished. And somewhere a little girl named Maya was learning multiplication and laughing with friends and sleeping in a real bed, her father's choices teaching her that even when life knocks you down, even when you're living in your van with $100 and no options, you can still choose to be the person you want to be. You can still find your way home.